just to be, so I can keep an eye on it. You're muted.
We have an hour. We have
yeah.
until 8 o'clock.
An hour.
Yeah,
Yeah,
8
we
o'clock.
usually take about
Beautiful.
an hour, and I usually talk
Cool.
about Q&A. If there's any Q&A, you guys can put it in the chat and I'll ask the question for you, or you can raise your hand, which is down where it says reactions, and then you can unmute yourself and ask the question. So have at it.
Love it. Very cool. So yeah, please ask questions along the way. We can do Q&A like intersprinkled, and then we can also leave time at the end to tidy up. Yeah, we can speak about the two-story tiny house in particular. You know, maybe I'll give a quick background, and then I'll lead into answering that. So and it'll help with some of the other builders in here of how we've, you know, where we've come from, where we're going, and how we got, you know, to be at this place right now. I have a company since 2011 that develops curriculum and trains teachers, mostly in trade schools and colleges in the trades. And that started off with bringing renewable energy, such as solar and wind, into electrical trades programs, and then, you know, evolved into us doing all kinds of, you know, construction type curriculum for schools. And when we do that, that's a pretty robust thing. We were talking to Robin just briefly before the call. That includes an advisory board, that includes training for the teachers, that includes fabricating equipment, that includes writing and you know, everything to be able to make sure that when they go into industry, they're actually pertinent to the time. It's not 20-year-old curriculum, it's ready to go right then. And that's been wonderful. And then here locally, we're in Nevada County, which is Grass Valley, Nevada City, California, about an hour northeast of Sacramento. And we launched a little institute teaching kids how to do big picture sustainability things. We taught them how to milk goats and make cheese. We taught them how to do blacksmithing. We taught them how to plant fruit trees, all kinds of fun things. And then we took a cohort of those students and taught them how to build a tiny house from scratch. And that was from a curriculum that I had written, you know, half a decade before, something 5 or 6 years before. That went really well. And then we took an adult cohort of 18 to 65-year-olds and we taught them how to build a tiny house from scratch. And we did that in partnership with one of our local maker spaces. So all of our students had membership to that, so they could come and learn how to build with us. And then they could go and work with Liam and learn how to do welding or fabric arts or 3D printing or whatever else. That went really well. And it was then that we started, you know, getting requests to do custom builds. And in terms of just being able to just touch on that really quick, I really suggest when you're building a business, whatever kind of business, but definitely a tiny house business, is the more that you can create that center of influence, the more you can create this buzz about what you do well before you start doing it and trying to make profit, can really lead to success. So we had people very excited about what we did way before we ever started doing what we did. And then in approaching tiny houses, if you look at a tiny house, 90% of tiny houses, when you walk into them, you look to one side and you might have a downstairs living room or, you know, maybe a downstairs bedroom if it's a longer trailer. You look to the other and you're looking at a galley kitchen with a bathroom in the back and a loft above it. And the finish choices will change. You might see metal siding or wood siding. You might see cedar accents. You might see, you know, different kinds of countertops or cabinets. But in general, that's the typical layout. And one of the biggest complaints that we saw through the years, whether that was back in the day when we were writing curriculum, talking to industry professionals, or going onto blogs and forums, is people that live in tiny houses for any amount of time and get sick of it. Their biggest complaint is sleeping with the ceiling in your face, is this loft situation, because we're adhering to these height requirements to travel down the road legally. We have to build to those height requirements. And unless we do something like a lift system, once it's on site, it's still going to have those height requirements, even if it's not necessary once it's parked. And so we were commissioned by an Italian designer. That was the video Leanne showed. I love some of it. I don't love half of it. But that was the build that he really wanted. And he gave us very specific designs for that. So we took his quick sketches. We came up with renders to try to figure out what that was, make sure that he was happy with it, and then we built it. And the idea was that I also wanted to create a lift system so that we could have full second stories or have at least lofts that you could stand up in. And so that unit transports at 13.5 feet tall. And once it's delivered, it has a trailer plug that we wired to the same 7-pin system that you do for most trucks. You unhook it, you plug in a different trailer pin plug, and then you can push a button and the whole thing goes up 3 feet. We have a lift system that is, I prefer. Most people don't need to raise their tiny house up and down. They're not traveling with this up in the mountains every weekend. And we do a manual version, which is way less expensive. It's on an industrial rail system. And that one can go up closer to 5 feet. But it goes up manually and gets all of them get blocked and locked off and then bolted in once it's on site. And that one's allowing us, Leanne has another quick 30-second video if we get to it, for our newest design, which is maybe the world's largest tiny house. It's 650 square feet on wheels. And you guys would know more than I would. And it has an actual 7'2", upstairs clearance, which is exciting. And that was the reason we wanted to create a way to make tiny houses a little bit more long-term livable, and kind of get rid of that big complaint of the loss being small. And the other thing we do is we often do wide builds. A lot of our clients are moving to 10 and 12-foot wide builds. The cost to go wider is way less than to go longer. And so it's making more and more sense for our clients to approach that. And that's also allowing us to have a different floor plan with our kitchens and bathrooms and things.
Hey, Travis, let me
Robin looks like he has a question. Yeah.
Yeah, let me back up just a little bit on that, so that everybody understands what you were speaking about. The lift system, basically some kind of hydraulics or some kind of manual crank system, I guess. And you said it goes up 5 feet. So in other words, it raises up to 7'2" at the finished height. So it just moves, it travels 5 feet higher once it lands on site. So I wanted to clarify that. And then I guess the height of the ceiling below that, is that still in the stand up, 6'8", 7 foot area?
Yeah, it's actually just, I need to look at my drawings. It's been a minute. We're about to start that build at the end of June, I think. And it's going to be, it's under 8 feet, but it's just barely.
So it's close to 8 feet on the first level, and then 7'2" on the second level. But in transport,
yeah, if I remember correctly,
13.
it's because it's, the trailers on average, these trailers are about 2 feet off the ground. The downstairs is about 8 feet. You've got another 8 inches of flooring ish. We do 2x6s there. And then you've got, I think it's just at 3, and it's just, I think it's just under 3 feet upstairs before you push it up.
Yeah.
So that's the thing.
And
we're toying around with that.
You can lower the first floor height down from 8 feet, which is 7'6" is certainly still very doable if you needed to grab another 6 inches based on the height of your trailer. And basically to get the 22, 24 inches of floor height, you have to use a drop axle, trailer. Some people are building what they call a deck over. Without a drop axle, I think you get up to 30 inches, and a deck over is about 36 inches.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Anyway, so within those parameters, if you can, get a good lift system going, and I've seen other houses with lift systems. I haven't really seen those that really worked and took off. So if yours, works well and can take off, the beautiful thing about tiny houses is they don't move around a lot. So let's just say you moved once a year. You put your tiny house up north when it's warm down south, and then you moved it to the south when it's cold up north. I mean, you could easily move a lift system house. The only difference being, guys, is that when he's doing 10-foot and 12-foot wide, or actually I like to say 11-foot 11 wide, because as soon as you get to that 12 feet, you're getting into where your requirements, where you have to have escorts. But you're not going to move that one yourself. Probably you're going to have a CDL driver with a wide load sign and all that. But the bottom line is, I don't know that you want to move your house unless you want to go invest a lot of money in a big truck. If you're not going to move around much, for me anyway, when I would move a tiny, I would pay someone, a transport company, when we had our tiny house and we take it to a show or something like that. I'd pay a transport company, even though my Nissan Titan would pull that thing, and it was only a 20-footer. It was everything it could pull, and I'd rather have somebody with insurance and a professional, do it. So just to throw that bug in your ear, guys, 8'6" is not the magic number. 10 feet does give you a lot more elbow room, and if you don't go past 12 feet, you're probably still within realm of only having to have a wide load sign.
Yeah, those are really great points, Robin. And that video that Leanne just showed, that ceiling downstairs is 7'6", and it feels great. It's plenty of height, and we are toying around with those numbers a little bit for the reason that we may want to add a powder room upstairs, and if I can keep that upstairs to be 3 feet or low or so whenever it's down, I can actually get a sink and a toilet in there. Can't put a shower, but you could do a sink, a toilet, and even possibly a bathtub upstairs, and it still fit when it's all the way down. And so playing with those heights and playing with those measurements and playing with deck overs and playing with different, types of trailers is in these tiny houses, especially if you start doing things like this, you really are still, just like we do when we are going wide, you're fighting for inches, and just an inch here or there can make a huge difference. And, for so long, our trailers have been 8.5 feet wide because they're a standard build to make for a trailer manufacturer. So the cost is usually significantly less than when you go wider. You're usually getting under custom zone. And so those prices can go up. But, we have some pretty big local sustainability kind of pillars that we work with. As I mentioned in the educational side of things, we teach kids or we teach community members how to build their own houses with architecture. Community agriculture, we teach people how to grow their own food, and local economics, we teach people how to keep money in the community. And we've been able to work with our local rockstar welders to have them start fabricating some of our equipment so that we can have those be built here in our community, and I can have some more creative, license into how those are built, because I do want that extra inch that maybe somebody that's manufacturing them en masse may not adhere to. And for so long that was the standard 8.5, and once you're at that, I like that too. Once you're at 11 and 11 inches, you typically just need a wide load permit, which here in California is still $19, $20, and banner that says wide load. But I just wanted to resonate with that too one more time with Robin. Is I don't care where we're moving our tiny houses, we recommend using a professional driver. Most of our builds are anywhere from 10 to 20,000 pounds. You need a 1-ton truck to really be moving that safely. And so that's a huge investment. So unless you're willing to make that investment and get your licensure, just the fact of them having insurance is enough of a stress release when you have, a big chunk of money invested in a home. And so we always have that. It's 2 miles down the road, we get a professional builder to move it. Or if it's going further, we do as well. And so, yeah, so these, especially with the lift system, that's not a unit that you're going to plan on moving ever. But if you needed to, you could. Or smaller units, you could do the seasonal thing like Robin's talking about.
So let me ask you a question on your lift system. How does it seal weather tight when it goes up and down? Do you have to come back after you lift it up and re-insulate and do some other work, or how does that work in your system?
Yeah, so we did it, and this is one thing that kind of sets us apart from some of the others. And Robin's right. We'll see what happens. We're small scale. We do very high, like middle to high end custom builds. We're not a large scale thing. Like the other big builder that we know of that does lift systems is Wilderwise, and they just, from what I hear, they just went out of business, which is a really unfortunate thing. Their system is a little bit more RV-ish in its mechanics and the sealing. Ours, we went through this design process to come up with, and it doesn't show perfectly in this picture, but you can see that the upstairs is obviously bigger than the downstairs. And the biggest thing that we do is this overhang. And in that overhang, we now have a part that is on the upstairs and then a part that's on the downstairs that comes over. And now we're able to put weather stripping, like a gasket that runs that way. And it does the same thing in the front and the back. And so that when that comes together, it actually pinches that weather sealing together. And that's how we're able to seal it nicely, more like a house. And so that's all insulated up to there. And there's an overlap both from below. So the floor doesn't move. It's part of the ceiling of the downstairs. That doesn't move. And then the upstairs just slides over it like a sleeve. And it also has an overhang that catches when it comes up to that weather seal. And then that's a 360 thing. And that's how we sealed that. The other thing we do, and we could do a hinge system, but on this one we had the hard part, or the tricky part, is trimming it out for your baseboards and things like that. So we have it so it just clears our trim around our windows by 1/4 of an inch. And then after it's all the way up, we actually have a piece of trim that's custom made that has two parts. One is attached to the wall with our baseboard shaped like an L, so that also catches internally. So there's like a double seal. And we have a piece of trim that fills that gap that gets put in after it's been delivered. But it's very much just a T-shaped piece that slides in. If that makes any sense, I could draw it.
Yeah, no, that I can envision it, but it probably would be better once you have one done, just to
I
show
wish
us
well, I
the
did.
real
We
deal.
just shipped it off last week. Yeah.
Where is it?
It is in Lake County, California, which is about 2 hours between us and the coast.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't have a great video of it, but yeah, if you can imagine, this is a terrible quick drawing is, if you can imagine that this is our downstairs and then our upstairs is something along these lines. And so we have a weather seal here on the downstairs that doesn't move. And then we have a gasket situation here as well. And so when this goes together, those pinch with a flexible type of, it's not foam, it's like a rubber situation, but those pinch to help create that seal so that there's no traffic or airflow or bugs that can get up this way. And then on the wall, we have our baseboard / trim for our windows that laps like this. And then we have the same deal where this kind of trim extends over like so. And then that seals. And then this little tiny bit of gap, we have a custom piece of a trim that also sticks down in there. That's kind of how that goes.
So with doing
Quick and dirty
that,
way
you
to
basically you have it weather tight, and you also are able to insulate.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. This is all insulated. This is all insulated. Up in the walls here.
Yeah.
And the only place that there's like a little bit of an airflow insulation is this like channel here. And we sometimes, or we've toyed around with adding a little bit of a little, rigid foam to the bottom of that trim piece, but it really is it's a 1/4 inch gap. And with the two rubber seals, there's no air. It's tight.
Oh. Oh.
Well, no more loss than you would around the perimeter of like a door or something, or windows.
Do you have a unit that you're working on right now that you could show us?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of our biggest issues. So we're in a situation right now where, as a business, and I'd love to hear more from people on the call if they have specific areas they'd like me to talk about. As a business, we have a lot going on. We are obviously doing custom tiny house builds. We're doing this lift system. We're working with our local legislators to pass ordinance changes to our housing to allow our units to be accessory dwelling units. We were just on the tour of Nevada County, which is one of our local, it's not a commerce thing, it's put together with the Realtors Association, one of our nonprofits called the Economic Resource Council, which is there to help stimulate and help small businesses grow in our community. They do a tour every year of 100 movers and shakers of the community to get to know innovative businesses that are local. And we were on that tour. And on that tour, we had our board of supervisors and our county CEO and vice CEO, and we were able to talk with them yet again about that legislation. They're coming out to our shop every month or two, and that's going to change in the next couple of months. And we're just trying to help them. As one of the biggest great things I love about NOAA is we're able to sit and talk with Robin or Leanne or Rich or whatever and say, hey, this is what we're trying to do. What have you done before? Where has precedent been set? What kind of things should we look for? Here locally, the county just south of us, Placer County, passed legislation for our tiny houses to be used or legal as accessory dwelling units, which is great. That happened summer of 2022. We love that, and they have to be accessory dwelling units. Just recently, Mendocino allowed them to be used as primary dwelling units, which is more of what we're trying to have happen here locally. We're having a high housing crisis, as we are all over the country, but definitely in California. And if you already own a home and you put one of our units on it, best case scenario is for your grandmom or it's for your grandkids. And most of the time, it's going to just add to the rental market, which isn't terrible. We need to, help saturate the rental market so that prices can come down because they're pretty absurd here. Um, but it's not letting people get into home ownership. And so we're kind of advocating for that precedence that's been set to say, hey, let's let these be primary dwellings so that somebody can have a piece of land, they can have a tiny house on it, whether they build a house on that again at some point. Like I think we were talking just before the call, but in most counties, you can pull a permit to build and live in a tiny house while you're building. But more and more counties take note that that's a loophole and they put you on a timeline. And so we're looking to have it be where you can have a piece of land, put a tiny house on it, hook it up to utilities, and call it your home as much as you wanted. And I think that's where we're going to get to. So, we're definitely in constant collaboration and constant conversation with NOAA about how to, grow and learn from the things that we've done and the work that you've done, not just here in California, but across the country. And so that's the big one. We are in a really lucky position where Nevada City has Nevada City co-housing, and that was designed by an architect named Chuck Durrett, a rock star in the co-housing world. He's designed, I think, 50 now co-housing communities across the world. And he's become a dear friend of us. And we'll be creating a tiny house co-housing. And that's exciting to show how to do that, how to go through the legislative process, the zoning process. And then, of course, as educators, we document that and can share that with people in Ohio or people here in other counties of California.
Can you explain what a co-housing is, Travis? Some
yeah,
people may not understand that.
We had a client that left 5 minutes before we started this call, and she said it best, actually. So I'm just going to take her words. She said it's kind of having an intentional community living situation. It's not like intentional living. It's not this, two thing. But one of the biggest points is that most co-housing communities have shared space for at least a main facility for possibly laundry or a kitchen or just like a shared, even like a clubhouse like you would see on a golf course. It's a place that people can come and be in community. And then most of the communities that we've seen typically have parking outside of the community, and then you walk in. And even elderly communities have just thrived from that because now you're passing by people, you're seeing people, you're not just driving right to your garage, getting out and getting in your house. But co-housing communities are communities that are intentionally designed to have more units for the area and to have community interconnections with people built into their design. So how they lay out the houses and everything else is towards that effect. And we have a very, very successful one here in Nevada
County. Does each tiny house owner own a piece of land, or is it so they own a lot, so to speak, in the co-housing area, and then there's some kind of a HOA or something for the community building that gets maintained, and any other community areas?
Yeah, it depends on, there's different models. Some of them you own your own lot. Most of them operate almost on a condo or condominium type model where you own that building and that's it. And then exactly, Robin, you pay fees to help with everything else. They often have, the one here has subcommittee requirements. You have to be a part of a subcommittee, and that may be helping with landscaping, that may be helping cooking dinner, that may be helping with maintaining the pool, whatever it is. And you have those as part of living in that HOA, so to speak. So there's a lot of different examples for both co-housing and low-income housing. My sister used to live on Orcas Island off the coast of Washington. They had low-income housing put in there, and the same deal. I think it was a 10-acre or 15-acre parcel, and they sold people that had a minimum or a maximum threshold of income homes, and they own the home, and that's what they could sell if they wanted to for maintaining their equity.
Well, you're certainly making some inroads in the different legislators or lawmakers, so to speak. I know that we worked with Blaine County, Idaho, and City of Haley, and they basically wrote an ordinance allowing tiny houses with certain restrictions, and but they used our NOAA Plus standard, and they actually asked us to up the R values on those. And we've seen across California where they've approved the ANSI 119.5, which is the park model standard, to be lived in as an ADU. The challenge I have with that is the R values and the windows and the structure and all that of the ANSI is not enough. Not that a builder can't go above and beyond, but the minimum requirements really don't meet the construction standards that you would need to if you're going to create a dwelling. So we're excited about some of the initiatives that are going on right now with ASTM and with ICC to write standards for tiny houses. But any of you that are interested that don't already know, we have both the NOAA Plus and the NOAA dwelling standard on our website, so you can certainly take a look at that. The NOAA Plus dwelling is based off of the ANSI 119.5, and then we plussed it with what we felt like was needed. And then the NOAA dwelling standard is based off of 2018 IRC and 2020 National Electric Code. So check those out. I know we have a meeting with some people in Colorado. Colorado is the only state that has passed state certified tiny houses. They will actually give you an insignia for a tiny house built to a certain standard, and they think we're in conversation with them. Don't hold me to it, but we think that the NOAA dwelling tiny houses may be what they call as built. Go ahead and get could possibly go ahead and get an insignia to be placed in state of Colorado. So just to give all you guys a heads up of what's going on around the area, not just in California, but there's some movement in some other spaces toward legalizing using tiny houses as a dwelling unit to be lived in full time.
Yeah, those are really, really great points, Robin. And, for us and hopefully for other people on the call that are in places not California or other parts of California, one of the reasons when we started, NOAA had just the NOAA Plus. And one of the reasons we went with them is because we knew we would be doing advocacy work to allow our homes to be able to give permanent dwellings to our kids. I had a lot of high school kids that grew up in this community that didn't feel like they could stay in this community. We're in rural California, so our prices are actually lower than the rest. It's almost impossible to find a house here that's less than $400,000, and it probably needs $100,000 to go into it right away. And so if you're 18, 19, 25, it's just not possible. And so we chose NOAA because of the plus. We could have gone with RVIA, we could have gone with other ANSI-based standards. And we chose it because we knew we wanted to be able to build something that would be more like a dwelling. And so between NOAA Plus and now the NOAA dwelling, standards, and the biggest thing is the work that NOAA is doing across the country, is that's allowing us to then make those arguments locally. So the work that's happening in Colorado, if and when and how that's gone, and it's already ahead of where we are in California and ahead of where we are in this county, already that's allowing us to point and say, hey, here's an example of what we'd like to see locally. And so the more work that happens, the more you're aware of other things that are happening across the country. It's great to see other regions because they may be ahead of you in 1 or 2 different ways or 10 different ways, and you may be ahead of them in other ways. And so being able to say, hey, look over there, that's how we want to do it here. And so, setting those precedents is really powerful. I'm very excited to see what happens in Colorado, not because it's in Colorado, but because it allows me to then do it here more easily. So that's happening. So we have a lot of different things we're doing. When we started, I like to talk about the economic piece as much as I can, just because I think it's so cool. When we started, we didn't have funding to start. We borrowed 220 grand from the local community through microloans. People gave me $1,000. People gave me $25,000. We took that. Again, we have history of teaching people how to build, so there was that. So it's harder to do if you just jump into it green. The community may not, the community trusted us. We built 2 units, we sold them, and we paid everybody back their money plus 10%. That money, which was roughly $25,000, instead of that going out of our community through a loan on interest, that loan or that money stayed in our community and was at least cycled through once. Whether they spent that at a local farmer's market or the local Target, at least was spent once here. And that was a big part of what we do, and one of the most powerful ways that we got started. And now we're exploring and looking and bringing in investors because I want to build a showroom piece. And I'm going to show you the build that we're doing right now, but it's the custom build that we're doing right now. And so when we have clients come in, that may be exactly what they're looking for. And it may be a totally different style than what they want. It may not be the right width, it may not be the right length, it may be different finishes that they don't like. It may not be at all what they're looking for. And this one is pretty darn close to being finished. It's a little bit of a mess because we're just tidying up the last little details. But if they came in a week and a half or a week, all they'll see is the trailer for the next build. So they won't see anything that they can actually feel and touch and get a sense for. And so we're wanting to build a showroom. And if I do the same economic financial piece that we did before through microloans, then I'm going to take out a bunch of money from the community. They love us, they trust us, they'll do that. But then I'm going to build a showroom and I'm going to be paying interest on it every single year because I want to keep it. And so now we're looking into creating what's called a convertible loan situation where people loan us money. And then in 1 to 3 years, we give them back that money through equity of the business. So we have people giving us $100,000, and in 2 years, they're going to get $130,000 worth of our business. And we're structuring that so that at the end of those 2 years, we'll have given away about 10% of the business, which feels really good. It's a way of giving back 10% to the community. It still gives us the lion's share of the business so that we can keep making these amazing initiatives happen and own the business, but we can also give back to our community in that way. And it allows us to then do things like have a showroom model, because tiny houses aren't cheap, especially ours. And so we want to be able to say, hey, we built this, we can keep it. Whereas if I took loans, I'd have to give it back. So there's another just economic fund piece that we are documenting and sharing for our local businesses to help them see, hey, there's a tool that I could use to get started or to grow, or launch a new product. Yeah, we can take a quick walk. This is our shop. It's a fairly simple shop. It's 2,500 square feet. It's a new construction, like industrial building. We keep a keg of kombucha, non-alcoholic, on tap for supporting one of our local breweries. They make really beautiful kombucha. We have coffee and tea, and we usually have some slideshows from some of our builds happening. And having a nice shop is another big thing. We had a lot of options when we were choosing space, and we wanted something that could be professional because, in terms of tiny houses, there's a lot of people getting into the industry, and how you set yourself apart as a professional builder versus a backyard builder is important. And obviously, we want to be taken seriously and as the latter. The shop is a little bit of a mess because I've just been here tidying up, and we had a bunch of clients come in, so I didn't clean up. But yeah, so we have this large, I don't need lights on kind of building, and that allows us to build 1 or 2 units in size or inside at a time. We're moving to a model now as we've grown where we are going to be building 2 units at a time on an offset pattern of 3 weeks. Our average build takes 6 weeks. And so now I can have a crew that's dedicated and set to do framing and exterior, do that. That's about 2.5 weeks or so. And then they can immediately move into the next build and start framing it while the finished crew comes in and does the inside. And then they keep switching back and forth, and we don't have a lag of crew members. And we're also, because of our door situation, this door is 11 feet 10 inches. And like we just said, we'd at least like to build 11 feet 11 inches and long, boring, like engineering structural size. We've already made the door taller to get our houses out, but going wider is a whole nother nightmare. So we'll also be taking on some financial local investors to expand our shop into a larger space with larger doors. But yeah, so having a good workspace is critical to both how the community receives you and comes and sees what you do, and it's obviously a much nicer, more professional place to work in than if you were doing this in a smaller or in your backyard. It's so sweet. But this is a pretty small, simple operation as of right now. To give context, we did 10 builds last year. We did just under $1 million in sales. That was our first year. And we expect to do closer to $2 million this year. So, we're not huge. Again, we're small scale custom builders. So we are doing 10 to 20 buildings. We try to support local things and sustainable things. I should have showed you in the office, but we carry some products that are reclaimed redwood from the coast. And then we have hemp wood, which is actually from the East Coast. It's from Tennessee, I believe, but it's a really low footprint product that we bring in for flooring. This is locally milled cedar. Nevada County is known for its old mines for gold and for its old mills after that. And so we try to support those local mills that are still around. So this is Kubich lumber, which has been around for, I think, 3 generations now, maybe 4. And then we do this one, again, this is one design style. This is for a retired special ed teacher, so it's a little bit of a budget build for us. So some of the finishes are a little bit lower quality, but they're still very nice. We do mineral wool for the walls, and we do combination of mineral wool and rigid foam for the floor. We do post-felt spray foam insulation for the ceiling. We did a Shosugi bond burn for the trim, and yeah, she's got a really blue door.
Before you go too
here.
far there, Travis,
Yeah.
Is that an on-demand hot water heater that's gas-fired that we're looking at on the back there?
It is. And so we teach solar, we teach programs for solar into the schools. We almost always build a on-demand propane water heater, and we almost always make the interior cooking apparatus be also on gas to lower the electrical demand. And that's a combination of what might be available for most of our clients that is secondary to their house, such as a sub panel or running another line. And if you are going to go off grid with one of these tiny houses, the real estate on a roof, this is a standard 8.5-foot wide trailer, is really small. And the demand is almost the same as a regular house. You still have a kitchen, you still have a bath. Having a few more outlets or a few more lights, if you had a larger living room or bedroom, really doesn't change the electrical demand as much. And so having smaller electrical service or having a smaller solar system really can preclude you from being able to do all electric. We do it, we do induction stoves, we do electric water heaters, but the vast majority of our clients are on a combination of propane and electric because they need that drop in their electrical demand. But yes, this is an on-demand.
On-demand electric hot water heater is going to be at least
oh my gosh,
60 amp breaker, maybe 2 or
absolutely, 3. And maybe 2. Yes, it's going to probably be 220, at least 240s or 260s. I mean, they have such a huge draw.
Yeah. Now you can do a tank hot water heater.
Yep.
They make them 110 and 220 if you don't have gas, but yeah, if you're getting you want to get the least amount of especially if you have solar, the gas is almost a requirement to make it all work, along with the gas cooking and heating. Now you don't have freezing apparently outside wherever these units are going because you have some water lines that would be exposed over here.
Correct. This one is actually getting it's not on there right now, but it is going to freezing because of our situation, and it has a cover that goes over it that's all insulated to cover all of this. And then this gas pipe you can't really see, but it stubs out of that cover. Because you're absolutely right. These will all get frozen unless you put heat tape or some kind of cover over those that's insulated.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. And then this is standard build. We another thing that we do that some other builders don't do is and I advocate it with other contractors that get into tiny houses is these things are really small. So and you can get carried away, but using slightly better products or slightly higher end things generally doesn't break the bank. The cost of labor and materials for just the basic kind of shell of things like having just the siding and the interior siding and everything else with insulation and electrical is such a big part of the build that having a slightly nicer countertop or a little bit nicer of cabinets or a little bit nicer of windows is not a high percentage change. And so we don't do vinyl windows, our base minimum, and we go up from there, but our base minimum is Andersen 100 windows, which is a Fibrex. It's a composite wood kind of product. And they're a little bit beefier, so you get a little less light, especially when you get down to the smaller windows, as you'll see. But because tiny houses typically don't have very good overhangs, because we're trying to adhere to these width requirements, they get beat up. And we always, we not even recommend, we require them to put a full awning over the door upon delivery. And we have a local person that either fabricates that for them, and that's a kit that they can put on afterwards, or they can have somebody local if they're further away do it themselves. If they're here in the county, we sometimes will go out and put that in for them. But having those not vinyl windows is a big part of the longevity of these builds. And there's that old construction saying that a good house has a really good hat and really good boots. Tiny houses have great boots. They're usually 2 feet off the ground. That's awesome. And they have terrible hats because of us trying to adhere to these width requirements. And there are ways to do things about that, but most builders don't have very good overhangs or protections, so we don't do vinyl. Again, this is A single woman, this is a 20-foot by 8.5-foot build. The cost difference of being 20 to 26, which is our most popular size, is pretty minimal. It's a few $1,000s. She chose 20 feet because she's going to her daughter's house, and it is the most that could fit in that space. But when you're at 26 feet, typically you have 2 axles, and anything below that, once you go over 26 feet, you're usually looking at 3 axles, and then it can keep going from there. And so that jump in price for the trailer, and then for other additions in terms of expanding the space, we find that that 26 is a pretty sweet point for most of our clients. Our builds for that usually come in between 100 and 125 for those builds, and our clients here locally rent them for between 20 and 30,000 bucks a year, depending on if they're doing that for long-term or short-term rentals. So even on our higher, nicer, standard unit, people are getting an ROI of 4 to 5, maybe 6 years, which is pretty amazing and kind of a no-brainer in our housing climate, which is part of what helps us be successful. But
so
yeah, so
you did, Travis, you said you did 10 builds last year.
yeah, we did 10 builds last year.
Where did your clients come from, or how are you advertising and selling these units, or are they just coming to you and because people know you're building these? Where do you get your people from?
Yeah, so Robin, we started off again, like I said at the beginning, and I really advocate that for whatever kind of business you're in. We started off when we moved to this community. I met up with a contractor that was taking down an old fence at a historic building, and I took all those pine boards and we made a chai cart, tea cart, and we put it out at our local farmers market, which is a big part of this community. We threw out chairs and we just got to know people. Just had a cup of tea and got to know what the community needed and wanted. So the first thing was finding out what was needed here. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to find out that housing was a big part of that. We need housing desperately in California and in our community. And then the next part was doing the educational thing, not as a total, means to an end. We love teaching, but also as a means to an end to get to the place where we're saying, hey, this is something that we do. This is something we do well. Come and see it. Come and support your community. Come and support your kids. Be excited about what we do. See how we're infusing the local economy with dollars, see how we're teaching the next generation, see these things, get people really excited. And now we're going to launch tiny houses. And so people here locally want to come to us for their business. And because we're custom, because we do, unique builds each time, that's a more expensive process, obviously, than somebody like a larger manufacturer. We have Clever Tiny Homes down in San Diego. I think they're building 3 or 4 units a week. And there's zero opportunity for a client to change that. They do beautiful homes. But because the difference of having somebody build the same thing over and over again, you can have lower cost labor on a jig, do the same wall every day for their entire time of working with you. Whereas we do custom builds. So I need my framer to be thinking about what my plumber is going to do in a couple of weeks. I need my plumber to be thinking about what my finished carpenter is going to be doing. And so we have a higher labor force. Our average is probably twice labor per hour than what a model of builder that was just doing the same build over and over again, or the same couple of models. And so I don't know where I was going with that, but that was where I was. But yeah, so this is a go ahead, Robin.
Yeah, I'd say let's check out the inside there. We got 10 minutes.
So this is okay. So yeah, so she's doing a single woman with a dog. We have this beautiful spice rack for her, but we ripped it out, which is maybe my biggest pet peeve, is that you can see the fender there. But she had to take it out because her dog crate didn't quite fit. And that's why she gets this lovely overhang here, and she gets to see her fender. But she may go back in and finish that one day. She's doing a Murphy's bed with a little desk that folds out. And then she's got a little craft station in the corner of this kind of like bay-esque window situation with some cubbies underneath. We just took out, there's a shelf unit here. We're just finishing it and polying it. There's shelves beside the kitchen sink. She was adamant about not having a cooktop on this one. I even told her I'd pay for it just in case she ever wanted to cook, but she says she never does. And so there's no cooktop. She gave us her microwave and her convection oven and asked us to do this. These have little doors on them that are also getting finished. And then her storage is purely, or her loft is purely for storage. And you can see, it's a pretty small loft. You throw an 8 or 10-inch mattress in there and it's getting pretty claustrophobic. And it's really tough in a tiny house if you do 2 feet for the trailer, 6.5 feet for the bathroom. you're at like 4 feet and some change for your loft. And you can do a gable roof. We do that more often. And that feels a little more open. You can cheat a little bit. But it's always been a limiting factor, which is why we're so excited about that lift system. Um, and again, this is some people's design. They like this. Some people would never have a black shower, but that's what she wanted. We're having one of our local uh, glass makers come in and install this. She's doing an incinerator toilet. And these are pretty exciting. She's having a custom, or not custom, she's sending us her toilet seat that is a plug-in warm seat so that she can have that. And then she did a stackable washer dryer. I will say for builders out there, we do custom or a composting toilet sometimes. We do incinerator toilet sometimes. And every time we plumb for a flush toilet underneath. That was a really good lesson when we first did our team build. We had sold a tiny house to a client and she wanted a composting toilet. We put it in. She went through a horrendous divorce and I let her out of the contract. And then the next client said they loved the tiny house. They wanted to buy it. The only problem was they needed a flush toilet, and retroactively putting in a flush toilet with a vent and everything was a real pain in the butt, no pun intended. And so we always plumb it. And so this underneath it has the drain for a flush toilet, and it's just capped and ready in case she ever sells this or she wants to switch over to a flush toilet or change a site. I highly recommend that. And we do a couple of other just redundant potential things. So we put in a gas electric on-demand heater, like Robin pointed out, but we wired that in case they wanted to go to an electric water heater. It was a few extra bucks of wire. It's already being run through the wall, and it's there ready for them if they ever want to plug into that. We also
Let's back up
do
for just a second there, Travis, on the incinerating toilet. Do you know what the electrical draw is on that, or is it a gas incinerator?
no. It's 110, which is cool because they do make a 220, but it's a 110, and it's not super low. It's pretty hefty, and it has an hour and a half runtime. You can use it while it's running, but I don't know off the top of my head, Robin. We use Incinilet, and they have it on their website if you're interested in that. And they break down exactly how much the draw is. And I should know that as an old teacher of electrical, but I just don't want to misquote it.
Do you know
but
what the breaker
it is
is?
significant.
Do you know what the breaker size is for that?
Yeah, it's only a 20 amp breaker.
Well, that's not
for
bad.
that. No,
Yeah.
it's 12 gauge wire, 20 amp
amp
breaker.
If you have a 50 amp plug-in, which is standard for quote unquote,
which is standard.
Tiny house RVs, would that incinerator work with a 50 amp with everything else? Maybe if it's only 20 amp. I thought they were higher draw, but they do use some power when they do the incinerating. They're great. They just create ash in the end, but they do use some electrical.
They do, and that is exactly it. And you just have to do those calculations between your mini split, your washer dryer. There's no way in heck she knows this. She cannot wash her clothes while that incinerator toilet's running. Things like that. Is you just have to do the math for it all, and you have to up that electrical demand. On that same note, we've done builds. We just had 3 units built up for a mountain biking retreat just north of us that are a little bit more modern style. They're all metal buildings and quite beautiful. But they did 2 bunk houses with a bathhouse in between. And those bunk houses just have a little simple kitchenette. They have a microwave and a mini split. He's running that off of 110 solar power. And his draw is like nothing because it's just the refrigerator and the lights. And so we wired that panel with a jumper so that in case he ever wants to go to it, he can hook up a 50 amp break or a 50 amp RV plug to it, but he can do an adapter and bring that down to 110, 20 amps. I think he's running it on. And we just did a jumper between the 2 legs, and that's where he'll be until he decides to upgrade or do something else. And so
Most people won't understand that. Most people won't understand that, Travis. A jumper between 2 legs.
Yeah, so 220. Yeah, that's fair. That could be seen as a lot of different things, right?
So really what he's talking about is when you have 220, you have 2 110 legs coming into the house. And when you're running 110 only, you have to run a jumper between one 110 leg to the other 110 leg. Yeah, he's going to show you what
So
you do.
please don't
panels.
judge me because this is hot wired right now, so that we can turn on the lights for you guys and other things. So just ignore this cord right here. Ignore this cord. But yeah, so you have 110 volts coming into each leg, and we can run a jumper, and we actually have one on this one that connects those two. And it can be up here on the main bus. Oftentimes we actually do this on the breaker here. And so that red wire and that black wire are each powering. This is our main switch most of the time. This is where our main service is coming into. And there's different models of circuit or breaker boxes, but you just basically are jumping live from this one to this one so that it's always on. You just have to really know your electrical load and what you're gonna, otherwise you're just gonna be tripping breakers all the time.
Also, Travis, I see that
Awesome.
we have a hand raised. Alexis, did you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. Oh, I didn't answer your time. I'm sorry. Please, yes, Alexis.
Yeah, I have a question about the incinerator toilets. Is there a bad smell with using those?
Yeah, I honestly, personally, have never even used one. One of my old students put one in her property and had great success with it. I have heard from reading forums, talking to people, that there is a little bit of a burn smell, and it's because you use a paper filter, and that's what you do your business in, and it drops down into that bottom place to burn into ash, like Robin said, which is pretty inert, something that's really hard to screw up. That burn of that paper can be the first thing, but it's vented to go outside the building right away. And it seems from what people have said that it doesn't seem to smell after that first minute. Right outside your building, you might have some smell where it's venting. So that's another thing to, extend that pipe above your roof line if you wanted to.
So in the next couple of minutes, let's go ahead and take a couple of questions. Let's see, Paul's got his hand raised, and Leanne, if you could get ready if there's any in the chat.
Yes, I was about to grab Susan, but I think she has her hand up now. So we'll take Paul. What's your question, Paul?
On the incinerator toilets, are they available with propane?
Yes.
Did you make a propane model? Absolutely. And again, it's just going back to that. It's going back to that same point of like lowering that electrical demand, as I would recommend that for most tiny houses.
That's exactly
I
what. Do you have any idea the pricing on those?
I don't offhand. I don't know if anyone else in the chat does, but they're, like that incinerator toilet, electrical 110 with that 20 amp breaker. Again, I'm not sure exactly the amperage. It was $3,000. So they're not super cheap. I would imagine that it's probably in that $3,000 or $4,000 range for a propane version. And but that's great because like this client, she was quoted $15,000 to put in a septic system to catch that, and so she's going to spend $3,000 for a toilet instead.
Aaron did reply that the incinerating toilet is 4,000.
Yeah, the Cinderella. Nice. Thanks,
Cinderella
Aaron.
is the propane incinerator. Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah, and that's the model we've been recommended as well as the Cinderella.
Thank you.
I think Susan had a question.
Oops, let me unmute myself. I'll put my hand down too. So I would like for you to talk about this system that creates this second floor. It seems like, one, I'm wondering what are the demands? Like you said, it can be done manually. What are the demands? I'm thinking about the homeowner who is not necessarily mechanically inclined, whether it's a manual system or a mechanical system. Like, what's really involved? What is required of the homeowner to operate it? And I'm also wondering about, it seems like a really big thing that could go wrong, and it's a thing that could go wrong, that could be a massive problem that nobody can solve except you guys. Whether, I'm wondering about what happens if moisture gets in there, or snow, or anyway, can you speak to those things? The challenges, we'll say.
Yeah, there are real challenges to this, and whatever R&D you're doing, you really need to know going into it, there are going to be big challenges and challenges you're not even going to think about. We've come across things in that first prototype that we had no idea would have come up. The sealing actually of the weather stripping has worked really, really well. We built that unit that Leanne showed a quick video for a very particular client on an automatic system because he wants to take it around to shows to show it and sell it as part of his own retirement, and then have us be the exclusive manufacturer of that. I would not recommend automatic lift for almost any other client because it is something you have to be really careful while you're raising and lowering it. It takes attention. And again, these tiny houses aren't made to go up and down all the time. Most of our upcoming builds that are using this lift are using the manual system. It's on an industrial rail system. I don't have a rail here, unfortunately. I do have one of the like ball bearing kind of tracks to give you an idea. That's what's in the shop. But this is just a super robust kind of roller system, and this goes onto our wall system, and then that's tied in and welded on with brackets. There's a lot that goes into that, but it basically slides down. Let me just set it up. It slides down a track system, so that track goes here, and then that's what keeps it in line. And then we have a couple of other elements to help keep it laterally supported. But all of it has to be engineered. So I would say, like, definitely, if you're going to go through some of these things, making good friends with engineers, structural engineers is number one. And, that's another big part of what we do. By being a big asset in our community, we also have really wonderful partners that can come and help us out with things like this. So we have Lincoln and Long, which is one of our, I think they've been around for 40 years, rock star engineers in the community to help us get through those constraints. And there's a few other little nuances, but that's the main thing. And then you mentioned like water and things like that. One of the things that I love about the manual, and again, why we may not even do the automatic for our clients, is that there's really not moving parts. It's an industrial track system, and it's really easy to get access to it. It's covered up with trim, but it's removable, so you can see the track, so you can add oil or do a little bit of adjustments if needed. But there aren't a lot of moving parts to break. And that's key to longevity as well. I don't know if that answers.
Thank you.
Enough. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, any other questions? We're 8:03 p.m. We usually like to end at 8, but if there's any more questions.
Sorry, it's my fault. Yeah.
No. I knew this would be a great tiny talk. So we appreciate you taking the time to be with us because I know you're a super busy guy. So if there's no more questions, yeah, I want to say thanks again for being with us, and thanks Robin and Rich for helping move it on for me. And
we didn't get to talk, Rich, but I'm so glad you were here.
I'm sitting back. I'm taking it all in. I appreciate you, Travis, though. Really good stuff.
Yeah. I kind of want to apologize. My kids have pause, and I don't know why, but right at 7 p.m. they decided to go crazy. So I apologize for that. But anyway, our next Tiny Talks will be June 18th. I'm not completely set on our guests, but we definitely will have another great Tiny Talks. So if there's no more questions, if you want to ever rewatch this, you can go on YouTube, follow our YouTube channel. It'll be uploaded within a few days. As soon as my IT guru gets it in there, I'll make sure it's public. And so you guys have a great night. And thanks again, Travis. Really.
And thank you. Thank you to everyone who showed up. I know that there were some quiet ones, but if you guys have other questions or you have things like, you can reach Luann if you need to get in touch. But thanks to everyone for showing up.
Yeah, you can follow his Facebook.
A lot from each other.
Yes, yeah, you have evolved. I'm just impressed with your business and whatever we can do to help you. You know our number.
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks,
everybody. Thanks,
everybody.
Robin, for making this happen.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Travis. Take care.
Good night, everybody.
Appreciate you.